Does your doctor's attitude to risk affect the quality of your MS care? Let's unpick this a bit. This video can be used by newly diagnosed people, but also people that have been in the system for a while, should we say. I've had MS for 30 years, and I am on my 5th DMT. And I've tried to follow the evidence and the science. The evidence shows that the sooner MS is treated with higher efficacy drugs, the better the long-term outcomes are. Let's say that again. The sooner your MS is treated with higher efficacy drugs, the better your long-term outcomes are. You need to think about this. This is about you. MS is hard to get its head round sometimes. Cancer, for example, feels very immediate. It's got this spectre of death and everybody rolls into action, and in the UK there's sort of all these pathways and it's 2 weeks and we're not going to mess around. And you know, if you say, oh, I've got a little sort of suspect melanoma on my skin, wham, that thing's out. It has been for me, it has been for many people. And MS, though, you get this sort of, or many people get the, well, let's just, it looks like MS, but let's leave it 6 months and see how it develops, which is absurd. You have MS, which is a serious illness. It may not kill you immediately like cancer, so you're not getting that sort of pressure, but you're getting the, essentially being palmed off. This is serious. This is a chronic, incurable, progressively disabling disease. There's no two ways about this. And if doctors or nurses, I'll just use the term doctors, sugarcoat this, it's my view that they need to practice telling people bad news better. And I don't think neurologists are as accustomed, shall we say, as oncologists to having to break bad news to people in that sense, because it doesn't have the spectre of death. But it's a serious thing. You don't get better, you get worse. And nobody can really predict the rate at which you get worse. But the one thing they can tell you is that you get worse. Some people go from being diagnosed and in 5 years they're in a wheelchair with catheters. And other people, and I'm one of them, get really, really lucky. And I say lucky, I've got a variety of problems, but I can sort of hide them more easily, should we say. I don't have to have a wheelchair from others. But the fact is, it gets worse. But the medication approach by some doctors is wait and see, we'll tiptoe up to this, let's not go too quickly, have you seen the side effects? And often that's the doctor's way of saying, I've read all the data and I'm unsure about it, or I wouldn't like it. But they don't have MS. You have MS. You are faced with it, like me, every day. You go to sleep with it, you wake up with it. When I was diagnosed, I thought about it every 5 seconds. After 30 years, from not doing a video, I can go up to 15 minutes without thinking about it. But it's been there in my brain reliably for over half my life. And the effects have just slowly built. I'm fighting a slight rearguard action because I've had it so long there were no drugs. But now I'm on my 5th DMT. I've just finished my 2nd round of alemtuzumab, Lemtrada. Because I'm damned if I'm going to give up fighting this thing. If Lemtrada was available and I knew what I knew when I was diagnosed, I'd be banging the door down for that. Or stem cells. And there's a well-known professor, Professor Gavin Giovannoni, who's an MS specialist neurologist, who is on record saying, bluntly, if he were diagnosed with MS, he'd go straight onto stem cells. I know another neurologist in the Netherlands, and she was saying, actually, I'd want to be straight onto alemtuzumab. So they're split, but what they are saying is, I want a high-efficacy medication as soon as possible. I have 2 friends that are doctors that have recently been diagnosed with MS. One of them is moving from natalizumab, a highly effective DMT, or pretty damn effective DMT, onto stem cells, because they figure it's, even if it's 5%, it's upping the fight. I have another one, and she has opted for cladribine, Mavenclad, but straight out of the gates. No messing around, no building up, none of this nonsense. It doesn't matter what your MRI looks like today. There's no way of telling if it's going to be mild or if it's going to be serious in 5, 15, 20, 40 years' time. So what we do know from the data is medicate early, medicate effectively. And it really, really pains me because the other day I saw a 30-year-old woman who was diagnosed quite young and told, there, it's mild, we just need to watch and wait. So I think she was diagnosed at 16, 17, which is quite early. But she got the there, let's wait and see how this gets on. Hits 26, 10 years later, bang, she's deteriorated. She's now 30. She uses a walker to get around. She has various other issues. And it's just, to me, strikes me as that could have been mitigated. You can't avoid it. It's incurable. But it could have been mitigated, the rate at which she declined. There's no guarantee. Some of us do really badly. It doesn't matter what happened. I had a friend, she had 2 rounds of Lemontrada and then had to go on to stem cells. It had a huge difference to her, but she ain't perfect by her own admission. But it means she can get on with her life to a much greater extent. She's got a job. You know, she's a vice president in a large company. She thinks that she'll be able to do more with her kids for longer. And think of the psychological impact of that, if nothing else. Plus, overall, it's far cheaper than being on an immunosuppressant, which needs to be infused regularly. But this is about your doctor's attitude to risk. So if your doctor's frightened of it because they don't have MS, and your nurse is frightened of it because any sane person, frankly, would look at the data sheet and go, yeah, that's not for me. But then, any sane person, if you looked at an ibuprofen data sheet, Brufen, whatever you call it, Nurofen, you wouldn't want to take that. But bear in mind, you can buy that in a gas or a petrol station. Yeah. So you take a medicine for an outcome and you balance the risk reward. You get in a car. There's risks of going in a car. But we're habituated to them. We don't even think about them generally. But every time you get in a car, or I used to ride motorbikes, which is a much greater risk, things can happen to you as they delightfully call life-changing injuries. Lose a leg or something. But it's just, and you've got MS. Yeah, they're going, oh, let's just tiptoe up to this. Let's not be too soon. I mean, that's the one issue I have with the online tools. Everybody's online these days. This is a video, you're watching it. But you look at an online medication choosing tool, and what it can't do is it's one way. So whoever makes it has to be really, really, understandably, legally careful and watertight. So you can look at it all and see it all, as you should be able to, but there is zero context to help you make your decision. And there's a lot of evidence that when patients talk about medications with their doctors who understand them, and arguably who appreciate the severity of MS, that changes, that it helps the patient, shall we say, feel more comfortable. It's not about convincing you to do something against your will. It's allowing you to make the most informed decision. And to be informed, you've got to appreciate the severity of what you're being faced with. And 90% of us need a medication to improve it. 10%, as Professor Schmar says, will get away pretty much scot-free. But it depends how lucky you're feeling. I don't like 90% odds where I'm in the 90% or I'm likely to be. I've never won a raffle or a lottery or anything, so why I would suddenly fall in that 10%? And also, it's a gamble you make now about the future. So if you get it wrong, and bear in mind, 10% of people will get it right if everybody decides not to do anything. That means 9 out of 10 people will get it wrong to a greater or lesser extent. I don't want to be in that 9 out of 10. So I want to medicate, and I want to medicate as effectively as possible. And this is a discussion to have with your doctor. You need to be able to look at them, and it's really, really difficult. There's a whole dynamic, there's much study of relationships with doctors. Very few people think anything other than their doctor's marvelous. And the doctors are very good at being kind and friendly because they've had practice. But having a medical degree does not make you an instantly empathetic person. Being an MS neurologist doesn't mean that you had a calling. Like I know one who, from the age of 14, wanted to do this because a family member was severely affected by MS. But the doctors that see you as just, tick next patient, please, no, these are the rules, these are the guidelines. And I know a lot of patients get that. And then you get other doctors who try to work it in a way, and they look at it and think, well, let's err on the side of caution. And I know a friend, he's doing brilliantly. 6 years after his diagnosis, his neurologist kind of squinted at the MRI and said, I think you should go on to Lemtrada straight away. And he went, okay, doctor, if that's what you say. And it's made such a difference to his life, because he could have deteriorated and not been able to do his job, which is quite demanding. And then where do you go from there? You're stuffed. You can't take Lemtrada and turn the clock back. I'm fighting a rearguard action. I only recently got it. I've done Rebif, Copaxone, Tecfidera, Ocrelizumab, which is Ocrevus, and now Lemtrada, which is alemtuzumab. So, I feel like I'm in a slightly different position, but I can look at the data, I can go to the conferences, I can see this stuff and think, geez, doctors owe it to patients to be completely upfront about the severity and then do their level best to get them on the highest efficacy medicine as soon as possible. If the patient says no and refuses, fine, but if you want to go and rub green tea leaves on yourself and do a cure, by the way, there are none, that you found on the internet, it's entirely up to you. But please, all I'd urge is do it when you're informed by the data about how serious this is. How serious MS is. Take that in and use that to help offset some of the potential risks. Personally, Lemtrada has caused me the fewest problems out of the 5 drugs I've taken. On paper, it's an oh my god one, or to some people. Other doctors, I think everybody should be started on this. So it's really how much experience they have, how they communicate it to their patients. Because most of us, if our doctor says, I think you should do this, that's what we do. And the problem is, if your doctor says, I think we should take this gently and tiptoe up to it, it's probably what you're going to do. It's what I did. And I got lucky. I know plenty of people that haven't. So if you're feeling lucky and you're feeling in the 10%, fine. If you're a doctor or a nurse and you think that patient's in the 10%, bear in mind there's no way of telling properly. So you can tell yourself, but there is no empirical way of telling how it's going to turn out. If you feel they're in that 10% and they feel they're in that 10%, fine, go gently, do nothing. But otherwise, the rest of us who are in that 90%, we don't know how it's going to go. The data says early and effectively. So guys, happy video, I realize. If you have experiences, share them in the comments. It helps other people see how you overcame them, or how you may feel trapped and wondering what to do. If you've got this far, you're ace. Please subscribe. It tells the algorithm that you like videos like this and you like my content, and we all know that's a good thing. And if you can really go that little bit extra because you think, hey, this guy's great and what the channel does is great, I need Patreon subscribers. I've got £98 worth a month. That helps pay for video editing. It doesn't go in my pocket. It helps me pay to get videos done. By the way, I make no money from YouTube either, in case you're wondering. So I fund this channel myself. So any help that you can give to help other people receive content like this, that'd be brilliant. Have an excellent day. Cheers. Bye-bye.